Smith Show starts right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250-plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio and Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Whole bunch of stuff to get into today. Whole bunch of opinions circulating around the National Football League, circulating about Jalen Ramsey demanding a trade out of Jacksonville. Whether or not that's going to happen, what's the best landing spot for him? Obviously, Cam Newton, his health, huge question mark. The bevy of quarterback injuries that have been taking place in New Orleans, in Indy, in Pittsburgh, in New York, etc. And the fact that Colin Kaepernick, whether or not he has not been called, whether or not he should be called, and what do you think it would take, if anything at all, for him to receive a call, and whether or not he deserves a call. You got a lot of people out there that don't even think he deserves a tryout. And obviously there's millions of people who think otherwise. So that's something that we certainly don't have to hesitate to get into as the show progresses today. But the first order of business to get into is Eli Manning. Eli Manning, the quarterback for the New York Giants, the starting quarterback for the New York Giants until yesterday, when it was announced that the number 6 overall pick in the last spring's NFL draft, Mr. Daniel Jones out of Duke, will be starting for the New York Giants in just Game 3 of this 2019 NFL season. This is a guy that was much maligned when he was picked up by the New York Giants with the number 6 overall pick. You had a whole bunch of folks out there who thought it should have been Dwayne Haskins out of the Ohio State. Why? Because Haskins threw 50 touchdowns in one season, while Daniel Jones threw 52 touchdowns over 3 seasons at Duke. 52 touchdowns, 29 interceptions, albeit he was at Duke. On the level of competition, not only that he was playing against, but he was playing with. That does matter, ladies and gentlemen, and as a result, we've got to take that into consideration. But nevertheless, Daniel Jones was projected to be somebody that would sit on the bench, learn from Eli Manning, at least for his rookie year, and then after that, take over the helm and go about the business of being a quarterback, the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants moving into the future. Well, that is not how it has panned out. Daniel Jones has been incredibly impressive during the preseason, particularly his last preseason game when he went against the Cincinnati Bengals, their first unit, not the second or third units that he went against the New York Jets and somebody else in the preseason. Against the Cincinnati Bengals in their first unit, he completed like 9 of 11, or is either 9 or 11 or 11 or 14 passes for 141 yards and a touchdown. The accuracy, the ability to make throws, make necessary reads, go through your progressions, etc. These are all the things that folks were glowing about as it pertained to Daniel Jones. And as a result, considering the fact that Eli Manning and the New York Giants are 0-2, that they are wasting away the greatness of Saquon Barkley. They've already traded Odell Beckham Jr. They've missed the playoffs 6 times over the last 7 years. As a result, people were saying, it's time, it's time, it's time. And I got to admit, I agree. The reality of the situation is that Daniel Jones is the heir apparent. He's the franchise quarterback. And if the New York Giants hadn't spent the vast majority of the last 7 years stinking up the joint, maybe we would feel differently. But because they missed the playoffs 6 times in the last 7 years, because their lone playoff appearance was sullied by Odell Beckham Jr. at the time a New York Giant, having a Sunday game at Lambeau Field schedule, but on an off day in Miami, not violating any team rules, but on an off day, This guy decides to fly down to South Beach to hang with the fellas on a boat the week of a football game, and then he was targeted at the frozen tundra 11 times, only caught 4 passes for 28 yards, is something that a bevy of people have held against him. And so when you look at all of those different things that come down the pike that has contributed to sullying the New York Giants, you got to get to a point where you're willing to give the folks in New York some hope. This is the Mecca. It's the media capital of the world. There's over 8.5 million people in the city of New York alone. We didn't even include its the suburbs and its surrounding areas. We didn't do all of that. This is New York City. It's the number one city in terms of population and sizzle and all of that other stuff. It's number one. LA's the number 2 market. New York's the number 1 market. Well, guess what? In L.A., they got the reigning defending NFC champions in the Los Angeles Rams and a not-too-shabby team in the Los Angeles Chargers. New York, what does it have? It has the Jets and the Giants. This is basically the definition of football torture. I mean, both franchises are relatively inept. They've looked unimpressive continuously, and it's a damn shame that nothing hasn't been done about it. Now, in the New York Jets situation, we got a starting quarterback that came down with mononucleosis, a.k.a. the kissing disease. We're not making fun of him. I'm not doing that. What I would say to you is it's great news that Sam Darnold announced that he's allowed back into the building. He's no longer considered contagious, so he could be around the team, although it's a few weeks removed from him ultimately getting back behind center and in the starting lineup for the New York Jets. Fair enough. But what is he coming to? Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder are not number 1 receivers, although both can play. Le'Veon Bell, poor fella. Listen, this guy comes over from Pittsburgh. He sits out last season. He gets his money, $52.5 million, $27 million guaranteed. The hits he's taking, he's not going to last the whole season taking these hits. You got to do something for him. The defense, I understand that Jamal Adams made a mistake. Greg Williams has been a long-time defensive coordinator. I get all of that. I don't want to hear about benching Jamal Adams for a few plays. He anticipated something, took a risk, made a mistake against the Browns, and as a result, Greg Williams wanted to sit him. Damn that. This team ain't good enough to be sitting anybody that can play. But I digress. Getting back to the New York Giants and Daniel Jones. You have to do this. You just have to do this. I mean, enough's enough. The New York Giants have missed the playoffs 6 times in the last 7 years. They've been a moribund franchise. Everybody want to call them a standard. They ain't no damn standard if recent history comes into consideration. They're just not. I'm not trying to be negative. I root for the Giants and the Jets. Not as much as I root for the Steelers, but I root for them more than anybody else other than the Steelers. I just got to tell you, as a native New Yorker, it's disgusting to watch the perpetual ineptitude that exists. You got Tom Coughlin there. You get rid of him. Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese, the coach and the former coach and GM respectively, when they were there, they wanted to bench Eli Manning. Ownership didn't want them to do that, but they did it for 1 game. They were raked through the coals for it. And what did you bench him for? You ultimately had somebody like Geno Smith up in there. That wasn't going to work. They took hits. They ultimately lost their job because Jerry Reese kept making mistakes, if we're being honest. And Ben McAdoo was a chubby wannabe Pat Riley with a slick back hair and the shades. That was the only thing that was relatively interesting about him. But you're the New York Giants. You have an opportunity to make some noise. And let's count the waves. You're John Mara. You're Steve Tisch. You have an opportunity to ascend this franchise into a new era. Jerry Reese is gone. Ben McAdoo is gone. What do? You have an opportunity to hire somebody like our colleague here at ESPN, Mr. Louis Riddick, a former pro player personnel director, a guy that's worked with a multitude of NFL teams, not to mention played in the NFL, cerebral mind, highly intelligent about the sport of football, and incredibly measured. Got executive written all over him. All over him. Lives in Jersey, synonymous with the area, very knowledgeable about NFL talent and the NFL goings-ons, and he's there interviewing for the job, and you pass him up. Why? To give it to Dave Gettleman. Not me, because I've never spoken to gentlemen, but there are people in NFL circles, pundits and others, who call them and who associate the word liar with this man because they talk about how much he lies to folks. I didn't like the way he left in Carolina because he promised Josh Norman a new deal, ultimately pulled it from the table and let him go without having a backup plan after a Super Bowl season in 2015 in which Cam won MVP honors. And what have you done since? Left Ron Rivera holding the bag. He comes to New Jersey. You say you didn't sign Odell Beckham Jr. to trade him, but after giving him $95 million with over $65 million in guarantee, what the hell do? You trade him. And what did he do? Did he get arrested? No. Was he skipping practices and being unprofessional? No. He was basically a pain in the neck. So because you got to take some Tylenol or Advil or ibuprofen, that's a reason to trade one of the greatest talents we've ever seen at the wide receiver position. That's according to Dave Gettleman and the New York Giants. So him screaming on the sideline or him throwing his helmet into a net that ultimately hit him back or him not necessarily answering a question totally correctly when our very own Josina Anderson interviewed him. All right? So because of that, we got to get rid of him. But when you get rid of him, what did you really get rid of him for? You wanted him, his departure, to be a culture savior. That's what you wanted. So you basically said, we love Eli because Eli is class personified. And let me say this, ladies and gentlemen, they're right about that. Eli Manning is class. Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, the whole Manning family. All right on down to Cooper and Archie, everybody. I had the pleasure of interviewing not just Archie Manning before. I've interviewed Mama Manning before. Wonderful lady. Wonderful. I had to fill in for our very own Michael Kay on 98.7 FM in New York City years ago on a day where Eli Manning was scheduled to do his weekly interview with Michael Kay. And Eli was on the phone 5 minutes before the segment. He called in, not a publicist, not a manager, not somebody else. He did. This is Eli Manning we're talking about here. Eli Manning is one of the nicest dudes, one of the classiest professionals we've ever seen in this business. Class personified. It's impossible to root against him. And when we sit up there and dog him and talk about he ain't what he used to be, ladies and gentlemen, we're not calling him some scrub. We're saying Father Time's caught up. You're not what you used to be, man. Period. And because of that, the decision to bench him should have been made arguably a couple of years ago, certainly last year. But the New York Giants didn't have the courage to do it. So they go and they draft the quarterback. And you got Mr. Cutcliffe, Coach Cutcliffe at Duke, who once coached Peyton Manning, who once coached Eli Manning, and then coached as a head coach Daniel Jones at Duke the last few years. And since he works out the Mannings in the offseason, there's a chemistry and a camaraderie there. The New York Giants were clearly comfortable with that, so you got Daniel Jones. And he's your starter. And Eli Manning's going to sign off on it without making a scene and all of this other stuff. And so everything's got to be smooth and everything's got to be great. And there can be no friction and there can be no angst or anything like that. But is that winning you football games? Shouldn't the priority be about winning as opposed to necessarily hugging one another, singing Kumbaya and getting along? I mean, damn it, if we lose and I don't want to get along. I'd rather win and have a relatively contentious environment than have everything smooth and lose. Now, ideally, you want to have everything smooth while winning. That's the ideal situation to be in, but sometimes it don't work out that way. And if you're the New York Giants, here's the reality. Eli Manning is 116 as a career starting quarterback in the National Football League. That's a 500 record. Ain't nothing about that Hall of Fame. The only statistical category that Eli Manning has led anybody in at any point in time in his career is interceptions. I believe that was on 3 separate occasions. Before I rushed to work, I had an opportunity to watch my brother Chris Carter and his man Nick Wright, First Things First on Fox. I know they're the competition, but that's my brother, Chris Carter, there. So on occasion, when I get an opportunity to, I watch him, and giving credit to Nick, because I ain't trying to steal nobody's thunder, he pointed out how Eli Manning ain't in top 5 in anything in his career. It's true. So when you look at all of those things, all of those ingredients, and you take all of those things into consideration, let's call it what it is. There's nothing about Eli Manning's regular season record that warrants him being in the Hall of Fame. But he has produced in the postseason. He's gone into San Francisco. He's won a game. He's gone to Green Bay. He's won a playoff game. He's won 2 Super Bowl championships. Both of them was over Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Now, I could make the argument that didn't help Tom Coughlin keep his job in New York. Why the hell should it help Eli? But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is Eli Manning's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And when Joe Namath, with a career QBR that would equate to about a 65 in his career, is in the Hall of Fame, I'll be damned if Eli Manning doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Yes, he does. He absolutely does. It's undeniable. We have to give credit where credit is due in that regard. Career 60% completion percentage, over 50,000 yards passing, 2-time Super Bowl champion, big-time playoff victories along the way, a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. He's in the Hall of Fame. Not in the elite room of the Hall of Fame, but he's up there. He's in there. But in the end, it is appropriate that the New York Giants made this call. It is appropriate that they decided to go in this direction. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as much as we don't want to admit it, the fans are owed something. And if there's one thing every fan should have a license to demand, is hope. You can't lose 6 times out of 7 years, missing the playoffs 6 times out of 7 years, and then talk about how the same quarterback got to keep his job. Can't do it. You can't do it. That's the equivalent of robbing fans of their money. You cannot do something like that. You cannot do something like that. It's wrong. It's absolutely positively wrong. And it needs to be said. It's just the truth. But despite it being the truth, and despite the fact that the New York Giants went into this direction, I got news for you. I'm not of the mindset that Eli Manning needs to retire. Because if I'm Eli Manning, 8-25 in my last 33 starts in my NFL career, I don't want to go out like this. I want to be on a better team, a team with a better offensive line, a team with a better crop of receivers, especially now that you let Odell Beckham Jr. go, a team with an organizational structural plan that I can respect. Let me tell you something right now. If I'm Eli Manning, I got to try to find myself a better situation before I retire. And I certainly don't want to sit here holding a clipboard for the twilight of my career. I don't want to do that. He doesn't have to do that. He's made more money than almost any quarterback out there. Eli Manning has pocketed over $250 million. He's made his money playing football. He don't have to do this anymore. And if I'm Eli Manning, I'm here to tell you right now, married, I got 4 kids. I might love the area and all of that other stuff. I'd want to be out. I'd want my career to end better than this. Better than 8-25 record in my last 33 starts. Better than losing my job in game 3 of an NFL season to a rookie quarterback. Now, I want a situation that's better than that. I do. And oh, by the way, I'd want a better coach too, because here's the one thing that I'm tired. Listen, Pat Shermer's on the record talking about he went with his gut. His gut told him to go up to Dave Gettleman and say it's time for Daniel Jones. Gettleman and him went to management according to the reports. They said if that's how you feel and that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. So props to Mara, props to Tish for giving Gettleman and Shermer the power to make this call. Because if you remember, John Mara, the owner, was on the record saying, I hope to not see Daniel Jones at all this year because that would mean Eli Manning is doing great and we're winning football games. So I hope we don't see Daniel Jones at all. Well, guess what? You're already seeing him in week 3. I don't think it's premature. I think it's necessary. I think you have to give Giants fans a reason to hope that, we can do some things here. I really, really do. But I will say this about Pat Shermer. I'm not here to question the football acumen. I'm not qualified. I watch football as a fan and as a pundit and commentator and reporter. I do not watch it as a football aficionado, an expert who played or coached on that level, like Louis Riddick, like Ryan Clark, like Damian Woody, like Marcus Spears and Jeff Saturday and Matt and Tim Hasselbeck and Randy Moss and Teddy Bruschi and Rex Ryan and all of these boys. No, they played or coached the game. I did not. So understand, this is coming from a layman's perspective. I don't think Pat Shermer ever did anything to deserve this job. And I'm sick and tired of undeserving individuals getting these jobs. Pat Shermer, as an executive in the National Football League, as a head coach, his record is 15-36. That is a 29.4 winning percentage. When he coached in Cleveland, his record was 9-23. When he's coached the New York Giants, his record thus far is 5-13. Now, granted, they've been bereft of talent for the most part, and I do understand that. But the reality of the situation is, when we going to see progress? So when I look at Daniel Jones, I'm watching Pat Shermer because I don't necessarily believe he's the right man for this job. I remember when Bill Parcells was acquired by the New York Jets. I remember that Bill Parcells came in there, and there were question marks all over the place about how good they were going to be, and they were instantly contending. That's how you know this man can coach. I remember when Bill Parcells didn't have a Tom Brady and had a Drew Bledsoe instead. And what does he do? He takes New England to the Super Bowl where they lost to Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers. I think it was Bledsoe. It's been, my memory might be a bit fogged. It was a long time ago. My point is, when Bill Parcells took over, you instantly knew he knew what he was doing because certain mistakes that were taking place prior to his arrival no longer existed. Talent that he had, although it wasn't elite, was maximized. These are the kind of things you look for from a coach. I don't see that in Pat Shermer. I don't see it. And he ain't the only one. I live at Cliff Kingsbury. You ain't do a damn thing at Texas Tech to deserve a head coaching job in the National Football League. I'm watching. Matt LaFleur at Green Bay. You were the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. That was the 27th ranked offense in the National Football League. What the hell did you do to get the Green Bay job? By the way, you were the 10th choice. You were the 10th interview. And somehow, some way, you were hired 3 hours after they met you. How the hell that happened? So I'm looking. Now, he is 2-0. And oh, by the way, he's 2-0 and the defense is playing better than they have in years. He deserves credit for that, but it does help that you got Aaron Rodgers. So I'm just looking at all of these things and I'm saying, okay, I'm paying attention to that. Cliff Kingsbury, you ain't do a damn thing at Texas Tech. You get the job where you got the number 1 overall pick. I'm watching Kyler Murray. Because I'm very, very big on what did you do to earn the opportunity that you got. The answer would be nothing. In Cliff Kingsbury's case, it would be nothing in Pat Shermer's case. I'm not saying they don't deserve jobs in the NFL. I'm not saying that they don't deserve to receive a check from an NFL team. I'm not accusing them of not knowing football. I'm not qualified. I'm saying their record states they didn't deserve these opportunities. Why the hell they get them? That's what I'm saying. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less only at Walmart. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. I'll get to your phone calls and more in a minute. Not just about Eli Manning and the New York Giants, but also about Cam Newton, also about Jalen Ramsey and others. So stick around. Again, you're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio.